This isn't a joke. Not another offshoring wave to China or India like we've seen before. This is a soul migration from the US to Canada. Corporations that once viewed America as the promised land for startups and the ultimate consumer empire are quietly packing up their headquarters. Engineers, machines, and trust in leaving. No headlines, no press conferences, no statements. But the consequences are echoing louder every day. The question is, why are they doing this? And what's waiting for America behind the fog? I'm not just going to walk you through a list of 10 companies leaving. I'm going to show you a model of decline taking shape. A crack spreading beneath America's shiny surface. One Coca-Cola, when the American dream starts from the outside. When I was a kid, Coca-Cola wasn't just a brand, it was a symbol. It was America. The hiss of a soda can on a hot summer afternoon. The flashing red truck every Christmas season. But now, people are starting to see strange signs. No big splash. No media fanfare. Coca-Cola opened a massive service center in Toronto and signed a bunch of aluminum contracts with Canadian firms right after the U.S. imposed aluminum tariffs that sent can prices soaring. On the surface, cost-cutting, but notice something familiar. This is the first step in every corporate migration. Find cheaper, easier production. But why Canada? It's not the cheapest option. Mexico is far cheaper, but Canada is stable. No riots, no polarized politics, no Hollywood or Detroit-style strikes. And more importantly, they have something. America is losing trust in the government. Coca-Cola isn't just buying cheaper aluminum. They're buying peace of mind, an intangible but immensely valuable asset in this era of uncertainty. And here's what shakes me: if a national symbol like Coca-Cola quietly pulls back from its homeland, maybe what's shaking isn't just the economy, it's the symbol. The belief in the American dream now being manufactured somewhere else. The question I want you to start asking is, a country still America if Coca-Cola isn't made there? 2. Nike. Just move it. The silent escape. They didn't say a word. No press release, no hashtags, not even a memo to staff. But Nike, the titan of American sportswear, just quietly shifted a piece of its soul across the northern border. $130 million invested in a new logistics hub in Montreal. Sounds harmless, right? But that came with 2 U.S. distribution centers closing, hundreds of jobs lost, and a brand new supply chain taking root from Canada. I'm not surprised, but I'm mad because for decades, Nike has wrapped itself in the American flag, sponsor of Team USA, brand of Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, icons of the nation. And now, they're leaving without even saying goodbye. We need to speed up delivery to Canadian customers, they said. U.S. Logistics costs are too high, they justified. The U.S. supply chain is too messy and full of tariffs, they blamed. Not wrong, but that's the surface. Underneath is a growing fear. America just isn't easy to do business in anymore. High operational costs, union negotiations are a nightmare. Tariffs change like the weather. And worse, the U.S. government increasingly uses trade policy as a political weapon. Banning, fining, blocking, taxing anything that helps win the next election. For a global company like Nike, that risk is unacceptable, so they just move it. If Nike, a brand embraced by presidents, loved by the public, no longer feels safe in America, who's left willing to make long-term bets here? And if millions of swoosh-branded sneakers are being handled, packed, shipped from Montreal instead of Memphis, is Nike still American? I'm not debating right or wrong, I'm just asking, are we witnessing the silent sell-off of the American dream, piece by piece, across the border while no one's paying attention? 3. General Motors. Detroit still stands, but the heart's moving out. If you've ever driven through Detroit, the Motor City of the U.S., you'll understand. General Motors isn't just a company, it's the heart, the symbol, the reason Detroit was once called the industrial capital of the world. But now, that heart is quietly relocating. No trumpets, no media blitz. GM has started moving chunks of its tech brain to Ontario, Canada, the R&D center, software engineering teams, AI groups for autonomous vehicles. Department by department, they're being silently repositioned away from Michigan. Make no mistake, this isn't some traditional global expansion. This is strategic migration. Why Canada? On the surface, low R&D taxes, big incentives, and Canada's EV ecosystem is booming. Ontario now not only hosts massive lithium mines, but is tightly linked with battery, chip, sensor, and AI companies for smart cars. In other words, It's becoming the Silicon Valley of North American electric vehicles, and in the US, the federal government launches initiative after initiative, but polarized politics, tough unions, and states that can't agree on regulations throw everything out of sync. GM saw it coming, and they're not waiting for Detroit to collapse again. They're pulling ahead of the curve. What hurts most for me is this: the smartest, most advanced, most future-forward part of the American auto industry is now being coded in Canada, no longer in Detroit, not in Silicon Valley, but in Waterloo, Ontario, in Oshawa, in places where the air is cold but the policies are warm, and someday soon, a fully self-driving American car may be developed 100% by engineers without U.S. citizenship. Are you okay with that? Signs of internal decay. Moving production is one thing, but moving the brain, the future, the vision, is another story. When companies no longer trust the country they were born in and need to dream elsewhere, that economy has already started rotting from the inside. And I say this not just because of GM, but because GM is just the opening shot. Because right after GM comes Ford, comes Tesla, comes an entire American supply chain being hollowed out. No alarm, no warning, just silence. 4. Amazon, a vaccine hub, a quiet retreat. You're still getting your Amazon deliveries regularly. Cardboard box, arrow-shaped smile, on-time delivery. Everything seems normal. But right as you're opening your package, Amazon has quietly pulled part of its strategic heart out of the U.S. I'm talking about the Cold Chain Logistics Hub, a vaccine logistics center, newly built in Calgary, Alberta. Canada, not Texas, not Seattle, not any American hub, but a place most Americans couldn't even find on a map. Amazon isn't making a mistake. They're moving ahead. Let me be clear, this isn't just an auxiliary warehouse. It's the facility that will process, store, and distribute vaccines, requiring sub-zero storage for all of North America, especially during emergencies like pandemics. Why didn't Amazon build this in the US? The answer: money, trust, and politics. Energy costs in Alberta are nearly 30% lower than in Washington. Canada offered an additional incentive package worth 50 million CAD, and most importantly, Canada has a less chaotic legal and healthcare regulatory environment than the US. When a new pandemic hits, what do you think will happen? Export bans, federal visas, state disputes, media pressure. Amazon doesn't want to get caught in that storm again. They're choosing to insulate ahead. They're not just preparing for the next pandemic. They're building a parallel logistics system, outside the regulatory grasp of the US government. When the next vaccine needs rapid distribution, there's a real chance the US will have to import it from Canada via an Amazon hub, who's running the emergency healthcare system. We're used to thinking of Amazon as just a marketplace, but if you pause and ask, who's controlling the healthcare logistics of the entire continent? The answer may send chills down your spine. Because Amazon doesn't just ship stuff, they're managing the medical bloodstream. And now, that bloodstream runs through Canada. And if Amazon, the most powerful logistics company in the world, doesn't trust America to handle a health crisis, then I have only one question. Do you? 5. Oracle. When America's data starts running on foreign soil, there's something even more dangerous than losing factories. It's losing control of data, and that's exactly what's happening. As Oracle, the American cloud infrastructure giant, quietly moves 1,000 jobs from Texas to Ottawa, Canada. Beneath the fog, a strategic shift. Oracle doesn't just serve private businesses. They provide services for major banks, central hospitals, U.S., government agencies including the Department of Defense, the FBI, and critical national infrastructure networks. Everything you assumed was within the U.S. is now being processed, supported, and operated from Canada. Why are they leaving? The U.S. is tightening digital data laws, imposing new taxes on digital services, driving compliance costs through the roof. Meanwhile, Canada offers a stable, clear, and business-friendly data law framework. And the biggest lure they have, a bilingual workforce fluent in English and French, cloud-trained to European standards, costing 30–40% less than in the U.S. Oracle isn't leaving out of frustration. They're leaving because Canada is simply a better place to build the future of computing. A scary question for Americans if you request access to medical records from a hospital in Dallas. and that request is processed by a server in Ottawa, managed by Canadian engineers. Then which country actually controls your data? And if tomorrow the US needs urgent access to that data for national security reasons, will they still have priority access? Or will they need to knock on the door? This isn't outsourcing. This is re-anchoring. I want to emphasize this. This isn't outsourcing like the old days with India or China. This is planting new roots deliberately and quietly. And when a company responsible for America's entire digital infrastructure chooses to place its trust in Canada, then this shift is no longer a trend. It's a warning signal. Ask ChatGPT. 6. Cisco. When America's internet backbone is being tuned in Manitoba. The question is, what network device are you watching this video through? Chances are it's a Cisco router or a switch, or one of the countless pieces of networking equipment that Cisco runs across America, from schools and hospitals to government offices. And now, those devices are being designed, tested, and certified in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. A small shift, but a strategic drop point. Cisco didn't issue a press release. They didn't hold a groundbreaking. They simply relocated their entire networking device testing lab from San Jose, California to Winnipeg. Not many people noticed, but cybersecurity analysts felt a chill down their spine, because this is where every device that runs on America's critical infrastructure gets tested. If there's a backdoor, a vulnerability, or a design flaw, it gets cleared for safety in Canada, not the US. Why did Cisco move out? Labor costs in Manitoba are 25% lower than in California. Cisco received $20 million CAD in R&D subsidies. Tax laws in California keep shifting unpredictably, while Manitoba rolled out the red carpet. But deeper than that, Cisco wants distance from the chaos of the American labor market. They want a place that's calm, stable, quiet enough to focus, and they found that in Winnipeg, a place where it might hit 40 degrees Celsius in winter, but where policies are warm toward business, the real danger isn't speed, it's trust, you might think. Well, as long as the device works, who cares where it's tested? But think deeper. If the networking gear your child's school uses is certified in Canada, who controls the safety standards? If devices running air traffic control, national power grids, or banks are all tested outside the US, are you still living inside an infrastructure made in America? This isn't just about one company. Once Cisco goes, Juniper might follow. Once Winnipeg proves it's quiet enough to test global systems, the world will come knocking. And while America argues over school gender curriculums, minimum wage hikes, or banning TikTok, the digital backbone of the nation is quietly shifting elsewhere. 7. Pfizer. When global vaccine control is being repositioned on Canadian soil. If the COVID-19 pandemic taught us one thing, it's this. Vaccines don't just save lives. They control. Whoever gets vaccines first reopens their economy first. Whoever distributes vaccines sets the tempo of global order. And whoever owns the production process holds soft power stronger than 10 military divisions. That's why Pfizer, America's pharmaceutical giant, has quietly moved one of the most critical links in its mRNA supply chain to Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, not just a regular plant. This isn't a packaging site. It's a cutting-edge mRNA vaccine production facility, capable of churning out 100 million doses per month. No ribbon cutting, no press buzz, no CNN coverage, just one cold line to optimize the global supply chain. But the truth is, Pfizer no longer wants to put all its eggs in the American basket. Why did they pick Canada? Canada has a smoother, less politicized vaccine approval process than the US FDA. Canada poured hundreds of millions into post-COVID medical infrastructure. Without harsh restrictions, Canada didn't block vaccine exports during the pandemic. The US did. Pfizer remembers all of that. They understand that when crisis hits, national interest overrides commercial contracts. So next time, when a new pandemic arrives, Pfizer doesn't want to be trapped by an export ban from Washington. They want a neutral base for global distribution. And Canada is the answer. Control no longer belongs to America. When vaccines are made in the US, Washington has a say. They can demand allocations, control pricing, prioritize allies. But now, when mRNA vaccines are being born in Ontario, Where does the decision-making power sit? No longer at the White House, not fully with Pfizer either. It's with Canada, the nation that makes the first dose. The real question, health or politics? Pfizer isn't naive. They know vaccines aren't just about health. They're about politics, diplomacy, commerce, even national defense. And they don't believe America can stay stable enough to secure that supply chain. They're not fleeing the US. They're building an escape hatch. J.P. Morgan, when the brain of America's strongest bank starts thinking in Canadian. If there's one company the White House, the Fed, and Wall Street all quietly listen to daily, it's J.P. Morgan Chase. Why? Because it's the bank that defines America's financial signals. From interest rates, credit risk, corporate debt, to government-involved mega deals. And now, its middle market analytics division, the corporate banking brain, has left New York and moved entirely to Vancouver, British Columbia. Not reported, but a clear retreat. No one's talking about it, not CNBC, not the Wall Street Journal. No mainstream analyst points this out. The financial signals that steer the US economy are now being compiled and processed outside the country. Why did JP Morgan leave? Canada offers fast-track visas, easy access to global AI finance engineers, lower corporate taxes, nearly 30% cheaper labor costs. Canada doesn't suffer from policy whiplash like the US, where every election resets the rules. But deeper still, Vancouver is becoming North America's top fintech hub. It's where financial AI is trained, risk modeling is optimized, and young analysts from Asia and Europe are flooding in, skipping over New York, which feels overpriced, over-politicized, and suffocating. The problem isn't data, it's trust. If financial data is analyzed in Canada, then every credit decision, risk model, or deal approval originates there. What does that mean? When the Fed needs early warnings of a credit crunch, it's pulling reports from a team outside US borders. When corporations need to identify investment zones, they're trusting algorithms coded in Vancouver. This isn't a technical issue anymore. It's a question of financial power. And JP Morgan, with a subtle shift, just tilted that axis. The unavoidable question. If America's financial center, Wall Street, is now just a trading floor, while the real decisions are being weighed in Canada, then is the US still the world's financial capital? Or just a display screen? 9. Intel. When the brain of a new era is being packaged on Halifax soil. Don't look at that tiny piece of silicon and think it's simple, because every chip, no matter how small, is the command center of an entire digital world, from AI, defense, missiles, to life-saving ventilators. And now, Intel, the iconic chipmaker of America, has quietly placed its packaging, testing, and fine-tuning center for next-gen processors in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Canada, not Ohio, not Arizona, not Silicon Valley, but a peaceful coastal region of Canada, far off the media radar. Why Halifax? $100 million CAD in government incentives. Lower logistics costs thanks to direct access to seaports. No choke points like California. Business taxes and R&D policies that are far more breathable than those in the US. But most importantly, Canada isn't a hotspot for geopolitical tension like the US, and in the world of chips, that's worth more than gold. A quiet shift, with deep consequences. Intel isn't saying they're abandoning the US, but they're no longer placing all their technological hopes in it either. They fear CHIPS Acts that change every election cycle. They fear getting caught in the crossfire of US-China-EU trade wars. They fear American supply chain disruptions from port strikes or government shutdowns. So they chose Canada, not because Canada is better, but because the US is no longer trustworthy for the long term. When AI chips for the military, chips for drones, chips for autonomous vehicles are finalized in Halifax, in a place beyond US government control, who's the final gatekeeper? Who prevents leaks, defects, or sabotage? And if an outside force interferes with that packaging process, who knows first, America or Canada? The US still has chips, but no longer. Technological sovereignty. Intel is still an American company, but its production, operations, and security centers are now fragmented. And once the chip refinement process is no longer made in America, can the US truly claim ownership of tomorrow's weapons? Or has it handed part of that control to a friendly but foreign nation? 10. Visa. When the banking gateway is now opening from the north, you might not use Facebook, you might not need Amazon, but you definitely can't live without swiping your card. And when you swipe a Visa, whether it's $3 for coffee or $3 million for a house, the brain of the global anti-fraud system quietly springs into action to determine, is this transaction real or fake? Safe or suspicious? Green light or red flag? And that brain today is no longer located in the US. It's operating out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Visa didn't move the whole nest, just the brain. Not the payment center, not marketing, but the Global Fraud Prevention Center. Hundreds of machine learning engineers, deep learning systems tracking billions of transactions per day. Decisions hidden behind every 0.2-second swipe, all running on a server cluster outside US territory. Why did they move? AI engineer labor costs in Halifax are 35% cheaper. Canada allows testing real fraud models in a regulatory sandbox, something US law heavily restricts. And most notably, Canada doesn't require tech companies to disclose their defense algorithms, unlike some US states that are starting to enforce it. Visa knows. Financial defense needs freedom to innovate. And right now, they see more freedom in Canada than in America. This isn't just an office move, it's a shift in trust. Have you ever considered that when you transact in California, but the risk analysis system runs in Halifax? A non-American entity is deciding your access to finance. What happens if Canada changes its data laws? US and Canadian privacy regulations conflict? The US government asks Visa to open the back door to inspect transactions, but the server is in Canada. Who wins? Who loses? And as the end user, do you even know? When the flow of money no longer runs through America's veins, Visa didn't need to relocate its headquarters to gut the system. They only needed to move the control center. And when the algorithms that decide the fate of global money flows are designed elsewhere, tested elsewhere, and hosted elsewhere, what exactly is happening? We are no longer in control. We only have the illusion of control. Canada didn't grab, they just opened the door, and America walked out on its own. Pause for a second after everything you've just heard. Coca-Cola, Nike, GM, Amazon, Oracle, Cisco, Pfizer, JP Morgan, Intel, Visa. Do you notice a pattern? None of them left America because they were forced out. None of them chose Canada out of cultural love. And absolutely no one was snatched by Canada. They didn't conquer, they didn't persuade with pressure. They simply opened the door, and America walked out on its own. What is America really losing? Not just jobs, not just corporate income tax, but the invisible pillars that once made America a superpower: trust in legal stability, consistency in policy, the ability to protect strategic values long-term, and above all, control over information, data, and belief. When America's own children, from Coca-Cola to Visa, no longer believe in that foundation, you have to ask a chilling question. Is America hollowing itself out from the inside? This isn't an invasion, it's an exodus. Canada didn't invade, they didn't have to, because America is dismantling itself layer by layer in silence. And that silence is the most terrifying part. No protests, no resistance, no red alarms, just trucks rolling out of factories, quiet internal emails, and operations being run from elsewhere. If Canada simply being normal, stable, and quieter is enough for America to disassemble its core, then maybe the problem isn't that Canada's too good, but that America has forgotten how to hold on to itself. And the door is still open. Today it's 10 companies, tomorrow it could be 100, and no war, no sanctions, no hackers are needed, just one bad policy, one unstable election, one ridiculous law, and another corporation walks through the door forever. So here's the question for you, watching this video. What do you believe is the future of America? Is this just a natural correction in the age of globalization, or the beginning of a power loss America never saw coming? I'm not anti-American. I'm not glorifying Canada. but I believe this. Power is never taken. It's abandoned. And maybe the saddest part of everything I just told you isn't that companies are leaving America. It's the quiet surrender of a superpower. There was a time when America would fight to keep every factory, every tech department, every footprint of talent. But now, they're letting it all go, in silence. And worse, no one is asking why. I'm not saying this is the fall, but I will say this. If it continues this way, the 21st century won't be the American century. If you found value in this video, share it now, because mainstream media won't tell you this, because financial reports won't reveal the real story. And if you truly want change, it starts with awareness. I'll keep digging deeper, louder, and more truthfully, but I need your support. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, drop a like, and leave a comment. I've seen the truth, because when the truth spreads, power no longer belongs to those who hide it.